going on, guys? It's been a while since I've actually sat down and made a comic book review for this comic book YouTube channel. So, in the spirit of me working on my Robin cosplay for KatsuCon, I figured, why not talk about Robin? So in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about Batman Chronicles: The Gauntlet by Bruce Canwell, Lee Weeks, and Matt Hollingsworth. And counter to the title, this is less of a Batman story. It's mostly focused around Dick Grayson as Robin. It's actually kind of a Robin Year One story, among the first of many. It's funny because I was originally planning on doing a review of Robin Year One by Chuck Dixon, Scott Beatty, and Marcos Martin, but when I started doing research to find out context behind certain characters that I didn't know or have any context behind, I discovered that Year One is actually the sequel to Batman the Gauntlet, as well as Dark Victory, which doesn't make any sense at all continuity-wise, even less so with this story in mind, but I mean, that's just par for the course with a lot of DC's early years retellings in Year One stories. But Batman is one of, if not the biggest offender in that regard. But that's just a whole video in and of itself, you know, DC's mythic apocrypha, if you will. But I think the Gauntlet stands on its own very well. So the story opens with Batman saving a mobster from getting whacked by the Manetti crime syndicate. And he's wearing that iconic David Mazzucchelli Year One outfit with the black and gray color scheme and the big black bat that's across the chest and the utility belt with the fat leather pouches. Or maybe they're canvas pouches, I don't know. The point is, Lee Weeks draws a very Year One styled Batman, which is important because at this point in time, this book came out around, I want to say 1997, maybe? It's definitely before Dark Victory, which came out in 1999, but post-Crisis Batman was almost always depicted as wearing this Year One outfit in his early career, because at this point in time, seasoned veteran Batman always wore the blue and gray outfit with the yellow oval, and sometimes the utility belt with the little cartridges. So this is very definitively a younger Batman. Albert de Guzman, the letterer, is also harkening back to that classic Year One lettering style with the cursive text over the yellow thought captions. It's kind of like you're reading a diary or something like that. But something that I thought was very interesting to note was how this is a Batman who isn't monosyllabic like Year One Batman. This Batman does take the time to talk to people, and this Batman does quip. And overall, the way Bruce Wayne, and Batman for that matter, are written in this story makes it feel like a nice little bridge between the pulpy Frank Miller Year One Batman and the more traditional Caped Crusader superhero Batman. And I really feel like Bruce Wayne's more chipper tone and attitude in this is a direct result of Dick Grayson's influence. You know, having that youthful, optimistic energy all around Wayne Manor as well as the Batcave. It's really starting to lighten Batman up a bit. And I think it's safe to say that I'm not reading too deep into things in that regard. I think Bruce Canwell is being intentional with that because directly after the opening action sequence, Bruce goes back to the Batcave and he has this very glass half empty attitude. You know, he's thinking about all the possible ways in which his actions as Batman won't make a difference in this case that he's working because he didn't hit every nail on the head in trying to get Big Boss Manetti put in jail. But then you have Dick Grayson, you know, just bouncing around the Batcave, doing cartwheels and backflips, and he's like, well, yeah, but at least some of the bad guys are gonna go to prison, and you saved a man's life. You know, it's that very ever optimistic glass half full mentality that really cuts through, I don't want to say Batman's cynicism because I don't inherently see Batman as a cynical character, but Dick Grayson is proof that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You know, if this smiling, bouncing boy can endure the worst that Gotham City can throw at him and keep smiling, then there's still hope for Gotham City. And that's why, for the longest time, I feel like DC's been trying to distance Batman from Robin, which I think misses the point of their dynamic, but also the point of those characters. But again, that's a whole ass tangent, and again, that's a video for another day, which I think I've already actually covered on the channel. So go check out that video if you're interested. But back to my earlier point, Robin's perspective in this story is very fascinating, because this is still a very pulpy, very violent Gotham City. You know, we're still seeing elements of what I would consider modern Batman storytelling. You know, the criminal element, in this case, the mob, is very much being depicted in that post-Godfather, post-The Untouchables, post-Goodfellas kind of style. It's a lot of high-ceiling overhead shots of gangsters in nice suits playing cards around a long table. It's a lot of guys smoking fat stogies in grotesque fancy high-rises. It's very indicative of what Gotham post Frank Miller's Year One was. However, again, this being a Robin story, a lot of that pulpy, moody gravitas is completely undermined by the nature of this 9-year-old kid who's not taking any of this super seriously. Or, in the very least, not in the same way the adults are. Now, that does bring up two criticisms that I legitimately have with this book. The first is an art criticism, and it's that I don't know how old Robin is supposed to be in this. I'm saying 9, because that's just an average based on how old Dick Grayson usually is when he becomes Robin. He's like 9 or 10, unless you count the Golden Age. In that case, he's 7. But something tells me that's just not quite what the creators and editors are going for in this story. But Lee Weeks draws Robin as just a standard young lad. But there are some pages where he looks 12, and there are others where he looks like a young 15. Like, I can't tell how old this kid is yet. You know, did he hit puberty, or is he still in that, like, weird in-between? Like, I can't tell. I don't know. And the other thing that stuck out to me was that I felt Robin's connection to the plot was a little too easy. So, okay. Dick Grayson in the story is Robin, but it's heavily implied that he hasn't been in the field much. You know, he's not running missions or anything like that. Instead, Bruce has him doing these field training exercises in the form of hide and seek between looking over cases. But it just so happens that while Robin is in a training exercise, he happens upon the same criminal conspiracy involving the Manetti crime syndicate that Batman himself is investigating. And again, it's a little contrived for my liking. But this is like a 50-page, one-shot original graphic novel. It's not a miniseries or something like that. So Canwell is just doing what he can to push the narrative ball along. So I get it. That said, with those being the only two complaints that I have with this book, and those being the complaints, it just goes to show how good this comic is overall. And again, it's a very classic Batman story in terms of the plot. A bunch of criminals are running a racket, but instead of Batman coming to stop them, it's Robin. And because of that, the tone is just the most pleasantly bizarre thing. It's kind of like if Reservoir Dogs turned into Home Alone at the beginning of the second act. It's kind of silly, but it still feels grounded in some kind of a way. And I credit a lot of that to the art by Lee Weeks and Matt Hollingsworth. And this is where I think, as far as the art style is concerned, Lee Weeks is the perfect choice for this book. There's a tangible simplicity to his art that feels very noir. It feels very Dick Tracy, but it has just enough of a sense of dynamism to where the story feels like it's not quite taking place in the real world. And that's where I'd say this book, for me, feels like the ideal sequel to Batman Year One. Because again, this bridges the gap between the pulpy angst of the world Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli were reimagining for Batman's origins, and the more heightened, world of wonder that the Silver and Bronze Age of DC Comics is well known for. Now granted, I know that Long Halloween is technically the running continuity sequel to Year One, but there's just something about the Gauntlet that, ironically, feels grounded enough to where I still see that transition between the old world and the new world just a little better. And this is just a personal preference, but I also prefer this as a sequel to Year One because, as far as I'm concerned, Robin is way more important to Batman's mythology than 90% of his rogues gallery. If anything, Robin is the inciting incident in Batman's career that sows the seeds for Gotham becoming a more freak show fairy tale wonderland. More so than the Joker, more so than the Riddler, or Two-Face, or Penguin, or Mad Hatter, or Catwoman, or Scarecrow, or anyone else who made an appearance in the Long Halloween. But I digress. Actually, something that was said in one of my live streams really stuck with me while I was reading this, and I think it was Supreme Omega, but please correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. But I remember seeing somebody say that a death in the family is the turning point for classic Batman, and a lonely place of dying is the genesis of modern Batman. And I couldn't agree more. Because I just kept thinking back to a death in the family while reading this, and just how broken up over Jason Todd's death Bruce was. Because even though Bruce is shadowing Dick throughout the story, you can see in his internal monologue just how proud he is, but more importantly, how impressed he is with Dick's abilities and ingenuity. Dick basically takes down an organized crime syndicate in one night. A crime syndicate which Bruce had spent God knows how many weeks trying to dissolve. And it just adds a little more weight to what I feel is an already pretty heavy story, because everything worked out so well the first time around. And then you get to the end of the story, or, at the very least, by the time I got to the end of this story, there was a very bittersweet aftertaste on the edge of my soul, if I'm gonna be a little dramatic about this, because the end of this book is so heartfelt and filled with the promise of what's yet to come. But you know what's coming. And look, man, I don't know. This is just a very good comic book. I had a great time reading it. And if you want to check it out, I hope you do too. Good luck finding a physical copy, though. I have one that I found in the basement of my local comic shop for $1, but I checked on Amazon, and this book is mucho out of print. There are ebook versions available, but this is just one of those books that I hope DC puts back in print, along with Batman the Cult and a lot of the Matt Wagner Batman books. Those are all very good. But hey, what about you? Did this video prompt you to go check out this comic book? Who's your favorite Robin? Do you like Dick Grayson? Do you think that I'm an absolute heretic for thinking that this is better than the Long Halloween? Well, not better, but just preferring this to the Long Halloween? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share it, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios.